All right, I want you to strip away the centuries for a second. Step right into the sweltering, incredibly high-stakes atmosphere of 7th century Arabia. We're about to examine a moment in history that honestly reads like a gripping, edge-of-your-seat political thriller. It's a story of intense tribal rivalry, a literal ticking clock of impending violence, and a masterstroke of diplomacy that absolutely changed the course of history. We're going to look at how a seemingly simple construction project almost sparked a catastrophic regional war, and how one man, armed with nothing but his reputation and a single piece of cloth, stopped the whole shebang.
Imagine the scene. 4 tribal leaders gripping their swords, their knuckles totally white, ready to soak the soil of Mecca in blood, over the honor of placing a single stone. This wasn't just some heated argument over logistics, right? This was an oath of death. A sacred project meant for worship was teetering on the absolute edge, literally about to turn into a brutal massacre. The air was thick with the kind of terrifying tension where one wrong word, or even one sudden movement, meant total annihilation.
Section 1. The Brink of War. Okay, let's dive into this and see how this holy site became such a deadly powder keg.
Section 2. Rebuilding the Sacred Kaaba.
So roughly 1,400 years ago, Mecca was a city where tribal affiliation wasn't just, a part of your identity, it was your absolute survival. It was your pride, your protection, your everything. The Kaaba, which was originally built centuries earlier by Prophet Ibrahim, had grown really old, weathered, and severely worn out. So the leaders of the Quraysh, the dominant tribe in Mecca at the time, made this monumental decision to tear it down and rebuild it from the ground up to restore its former glory. But the funding of this project came with an incredibly strict, almost shocking caveat. Not a single coin earned through interest or the tears of the poor was allowed into the fund. Think about that. This was the age of ignorance, a time rampant with really harsh, brutal practices. Yet despite their ruthless environment, these leaders possessed such an immense fear of divine punishment that they demanded only completely pure money be used for the sanctuary's walls. They were terrified, absolutely terrified of angering the divine with tainted wealth.
Section 3. The dispute begins.
For days, the most powerful, wealthy men in all of Arabia basically checked their egos at the door. They worked side by side, hands calloused, hauling stones, mixing mortar, and building the walls higher and higher in this beautiful display of unified labor. But that unity completely vanished the moment they reached the final, most critical phase of the construction. They had reached the Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone. Now, this wasn't just another brick in the wall. This was the final, most sacred piece of the Kaaba that needed placement. To be the one to actually lift this stone and place it into its final resting corner was the ultimate crowning honor. It was a legacy-defining moment. And because of that, every single tribal faction violently coveted the right to do it.
Enter the heavyweight contenders, the Banu Adi, the Banu Umayya, and the Banu Tamim. Each of these formidable factions insisted with absolute conviction that they were the most deserving of the honor. You really have to understand the mindset here. Backing down wasn't seen as a peaceful compromise. It was seen as a public declaration of weakness. To yield the honor of the black stone to a rival was basically to admit that your tribe was inferior. And in 7th century Mecca, man, that was a fate far worse than death.
The situation deteriorated with terrifying speed. It was a literal ticking clock of war. Day 1, the construction abruptly halts. The camaraderie is completely dead. By day 3, dark, open threats begin to echo through the valley. And by day 4 or 5, we reach the point of absolute no return. Bowls of blood are literally brought out, hands are dipped into them, and solemn oaths of death are sworn. The gridlock is absolute. Bloodshed doesn't just seem likely at this point, it seems entirely inevitable.
Section 4. The Gamble at the Gate.
Realizing that their entire society was about to just tear itself apart, the oldest man among the Quraysh finally stood up. He proposed a desperate, incredibly high-stakes proposition to break the deadly stalemate, a massive roll of the dice to avoid a civil war. And this brilliantly illustrates a staggering psychological paradox. On one hand, you have their immense fear of divine punishment. Remember, they were so pious about the construction that they only allowed pure, untainted money to buy the stones. Yet, on the other hand, we see their murderous hubris. They were entirely ready to slaughter each other right inside that very same sacred sanctuary over their own massive egos.
To solve this wild paradox, the elder proposed this rule: let the very first person who enters through the gate of the Kaaba be your judge. And miraculously, they all agreed. Imagine the breathless, suffocating silence that fell over the courtyard, every single eye glued to that one gate. The tension must have been unbearable. I mean, who was going to walk through? If it was a hot-headed rival from one of the warring factions, that might just be the spark that finally ignited the powder keg.
Section 5. The Arbiter's Wisdom. A shadow stretches across the entrance. A figure steps through the gate, and instantly, a massive wave of relief washes over the sweltering valley. The rigid postures of the tribal leaders soften, hands slowly release the hilts of their swords. Why? Because the man who just walked in wasn't a rival seeking glory. It was Al-Amin, Muhammad. Now this is a truly crucial piece of historical context. Even long before he received his revelation, his character was so utterly impeccable that the entire city knew him as the Trustworthy. He was trusted completely by friend and future foe alike. When they saw him, a unified cry went up from the crowd. "It's Al-Amin, we are satisfied."
The tribal leaders immediately rushed to him, loudly explaining the deadly dispute, their voices echoing off the half-built walls. He listened. And then, with a profound calm that instantly silenced the shouting, chaotic crowd, he made an unexpectedly simple request. He didn't deliver a grand, sweeping speech about unity or brotherhood. He just looked at them and said, "Bring me a cloth."
Let's move to Zamzamin and see how this builds, because it was an absolute masterstroke of physical diplomacy. He didn't just choose one tribe and alienate the others. Step 1, he laid the cloth flat on the ground. Step 2, he placed the heavy black stone directly in the center. Step 3, he instructed one representative from every single feuding tribe to grab a corner of the cloth. Together, in unison, they lifted the stone and carried it over to the wall. Step 4, the Arbiter, trusted by all, took the stone with his own hands and slid it perfectly into position.
Section 6. Defining True Leadership.
The crisis was completely averted. The war? Cancelled. In a single brilliant moment of spatial problem-solving and deep emotional intelligence, he turned an impending massacre into a moment of shared communal victory. Every single tribe got the honor of lifting the stone. No one lost face, and the sanctuary was completed in peace. So the crucial point is that true leadership isn't about standing on a pedestal and proving you're the loudest, the strongest, or the most superior in the room. It's about possessing the kind of unwavering integrity that makes everyone around you feel safe in your presence. It's the rare ability to de-escalate, to find the shared human denominator, and to guide people toward a solution they just couldn't see through their own blinding pride.
Which leaves us with a really profound, lingering question to evaluate in our own modern context. Are we living our lives in a way that people could universally call us trustworthy? If we walked into a room where tensions were boiling over, would our mere presence bring a wave of relief? It's a standard of character set 1,400 years ago, but man, it still challenges every single one of us today.
This single cloth didn't just move a stone, it solidified a legacy of unparalleled trust that would very soon change the entire globe. I really hope this deep dive helped you visualize the incredible stakes of this historical moment. Coming up in our next chapter, we'll be exploring the incredible courage of the very first believers. You definitely won't want to miss how this light of truth began to spread even further against seemingly impossible odds. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.